everybody. This is John Lemazny. I'm here with Sean Petrowski. Hi, Sean.
Hi, John. How are you?
Very good. We are bringing the customer and the service to you again this week. And this week we are going to round out a discussion that we had previously about men's fashion, because I really stumbled upon this conversation with Sean and really loved it, because I'm just getting into it and Sean's sort of been focused on it for a while. So I feel like it's a real opportunity for me to learn from him, and in sharing the conversation with you, maybe we can all learn something. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing pretty good. I just spent the last 3 hours on the road driving to the PA airport and back home.
To Philly?
Yeah. Had to pick up my sister and her boyfriend who just flew back from San Diego.
Well, welcome back to them.
That's right. Welcome back to them indeed.
Do you know anything about the flights that are coming out of Mercer Airport now?
I do. I actually know quite a bit about that because it's a topic that's interested me for a long period of time.
Well, it's interesting because I saw some of the destinations and I was a bit amazed. I mean, Mercer County to Chicago?
That's right, for as low as $50.
Wow, what is the deal?
It's the new airline. It's called Frontier. They're a major, I don't know if they're a major, but they're a national carrier who sees potential in making Trenton Mercer Airport an actual destination for people to fly out of and into to other parts of the country. And Orlando, Chicago, New Orleans, I think Myrtle Beach, Fort Myers in Florida, a bunch of other locations. But Chicago's and New Orleans are as far west as they go.
I was kind of amazed by it because I saw a couple advertisements and thought, what are they talking about? Are they talking about the airport in Ewing? And sure enough, you know, it's sort of amazing that that might get utilized more reasonably, because it's a great airport. I mean, very accessible. And certainly if I didn't have to travel to Newark or New York or Philly in order to travel to some of those destinations, I would jump on that chance.
I've been waiting for this to happen for a long time because I remember when I discovered the Trenton Mercer Airport about 6-7 years ago, Delta and another major carrier were offering flights out of there. And excuse me. Thank you. And then they shut it down, and there was nobody flying out of there except private flights for a period of about 3 or 4 years. And then this other company was flying Learjets out of there to Boston. And now like I said, Frontier is actually operating an Airbus full, like, you know, whatever Airbus is equivalent to a 747 is. It flies in and out of there now. So this is like a legit airplane flying out of that airport now.
It's amazing. And I mean, is $50 the going rate, or is that like a low fare?
I think it's a promotional thing to kind of celebrate the fact that they're now flying out of Trenton Mercer. I don't know how long that's going to last. I don't know, it doesn't apply to all destinations. Like I've heard the Orlando is like 150 each way or 120 each way, something like that, but can fluctuate cheaper as well depending on, you know, the time of year and stuff when you fly or how early you book. But I've seen the flights, a bunch of flights to Chicago for $50 each way.
Do you happen to know if any of the big travel sites like Expedia or any of those would be able to help me to discover what deals are available when and to where?
I would imagine yes, because Frontier, like I said, is a national carrier.
Yeah.
So, and I know Trenton Mercer, even before flights were going in and out of there, has always been accessible on those sites. So I would imagine that, yeah, that you can, as long as Frontier is participating in those discounts. But, you know, my experience has been, you know, if you're just looking to buy a flight, going to the carrier's website directly often yields the best fare. And I don't know, I haven't really explored that yet, but I would imagine that, like I said, because it's a national carrier, and Trenton Mercer has already been in all those sites anyway, that it probably is able to be done now.
So I'm going to have to look into it because there have been times when I have thought about going to Chicago just like for a weekend or whatever. I visited once and drove there. I mean, you ever want to hate driving, drive to Chicago. Uh, but I mean, if it really was something like that's pretty damn affordable.
Well, I know the $50 flights are available till June 1st.
Amazing.
So you got time to go out there, and I love Chicago. It's probably my favorite city in the whole country, actually.
It's a beautiful city. Although we have some really beautiful cities here too.
We do.
So to our agenda, and in a minute or two, I'm going to have to plug in because I'm about to run out of juice on my machine. So we want to talk about three topics tonight, and the first topic was when we last spoke about fashion as a topic, and I was sort of amazed and interested to hear about some of your views on men's fashion because I've recently become very interested in men's fashion. One of the things that I said was that I really wanted to be able to organize my wardrobe and see what I had and compare it to what I like. And I wondered if there was a really great tool for that. And what I have discovered is that there are tools just like the ones that I was asking you about. And very specifically, let me tell you about the one I found available for Mac and Windows. It's called Dress Assistant. And it pays attention to women's clothes, men's clothes, a whole bunch of different types, running shoes, sportswear, overcoats, dress suits, ties, etc., belts on the men's side, and then very specifically women's dress forms for to round it out. And then like you can, for example, on the Mac version where I am likely to have an iSight camera, it has a button right on the application where you can essentially take a photo of whatever you have on and put it into the database along with notes. What I have decided to do instead is to create a form in Google Docs Forms. And in my form, I'm able to customize to the most finite degree exactly what I want to record. In other words, I want to record the size, I want to record the material, I want to record a rating system that I feel like it fits well or not, and whether or not I like it or not. And that way I'll be able to sort on things and say, my favorite clothes are these 10 pieces out of these 70 pieces that I have. And I just like the flexibility of that. I don't think that most people would probably go through the trouble for either one of these solutions. As a matter of fact, when I found this application and I put the link on Facebook and tagged you in the post, I got some flack from some of my friends saying, apparently you have too much time on your hands if you're worried about, recording your wardrobe. But in fact, for me, it's become fairly important. And, I can apply this to anything else. There are a lot of collections that I have of lots of different kinds of things. And if I don't know what I have, how can I possibly manage it? Just give me a second. Maybe you can talk for a bit while I plug in.
Sure. I think it's kind of you can hear me while I'm talking, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I think it's kind of shitty that your Facebook people were giving you crap for posting the link to this software because, if anybody knows you, we've even discussed this multiple times on this show. You and I are both like stat whores. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly
we love our
right.
statistics. And
Exactly right.
we love our statistics about ourselves, our daily lives, how we're, how many steps are we taking, how many calories we eating, and this is just an extension of that. So for people to give you a hard time about that, to me, is basically like somebody saying, I don't know John Lemazny. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Well, and the particular person who was the lead in saying, this is silly. Why are you worried about this? Noted that she was not particularly interested in fashion, and that it was just not a concern of hers. And so it made sense. It followed that she would have this reaction to this. Like, why would you care? Whereas other friends of mine probably would be very excited, but those people were not as vocal. So anyway, Dress Assistant is the application if you want sort of a really simple approach to this problem of, I have 200 pieces of clothes that I want to have some sense about, and how do I begin to record that? My answer, of course, as I said, was to build out a spreadsheet, sort of like a flat file database, where I can collect that data. And I build it as a form in Google Docs because I like that sort of clean interface that allows me to just fill in the blanks as I go down, give myself prompts. And there are some really nice things you can do in Google Docs too. So you can do data validation. You can say, for example, if it's a yes/no question, you can say yes or no. Or if it's sizes, I can say, small, medium, large, extra large, etc. And it's worked pretty well for me. I haven't gotten a lot of pieces in there yet, but what I'm doing is, as I take off a particular outfit, I'll like record what's going in the hamper, and then, whatever. By the time I do laundry, I will have most of my clothes recorded. The other thing that I wanted to note was I have a lot of questions about what somebody who is male and interested in fashion should be looking at for a basic set, because, I guess the way that I chose clothes before was I just chose what I liked and didn't really care very much about having the core set of essential clothes. So I did a couple searches, and I came up with some really great resources, one of which is, let me see if I can find it really quick. One of which is I want to say the Machiavelli, but it's probably not the Machiavelli. Hold on, just bear with me. Nothing quite like dead air. Oh, well, The Modern Gentleman is the name of the site, and it is at themichelli.com, TheMichelli.com. And what I found there was somebody who was very concerned about explaining to people who were concerned about this issue what you should start with. And so it has a list of 20 essential pieces for a man's wardrobe, such as how to choose a quality white button-down shirt, or what they refer to as white business casual, and a black striped business casual, and a quality wool pullover, and a overcoat, and so forth. So what I really love about it was not only did it just give this little title and say, go and get a white shirt, but it describes, much like you did, what a quality white shirt should be, and what the cut of a particular suit should be, and some of the nomenclature associated with suits. And there are ongoing articles, but this one particular article was kind of sticky and gave a really good introduction into, you should start with this here and then start to build on that in order to develop your style. And that's just what I needed. And so in my own database, I set up another spreadsheet where I listed out all these things, and I'm going to detail the things that I already have that match those needs, and then go and seek out the rest of the pieces in order to fill out my, in order to fill out my wardrobe. So this is, not a high priority for me, but at least it's like I got started on sort of seeking out these things, and I have some guidance now. And I also looked at some of the big names in men's fashion tips like Esquire. But what I like about this site is it had a certain amount of individualism to the approach to men's fashion that I was very specifically looking for. Not something very generalist, but something with a special eye to quality. When I talked about this issue, did you feel like it was something that you would want to do as well, or did it seem like overkill for you given your experience with fashion?
The software particularly, you mean?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, no, for me, I don't know. Like I feel like I've developed a style already, and you know, can visually assess in my mind what's in my closet. Like I know the pieces that I have when it comes to like workwear or I don't want to say, I know evening wear is not the appropriate term, but like if I'm going out,
Yeah,
on the town,
yeah.
like basically anything that's not a t-shirt, that I would wear to the grocery store or to the mall or whatever. I have it in my mind, like what I have, what I don't have. And
But
I actually have.
let me
Go ahead.
stop you there. So when you are getting ready to go out, either to work or to play or whatever, how do you already have in your mind before you walk into your closet what you are going to put on, or do
Yeah,
you?
pretty much. Like like I'll approach my closet with an idea in my mind, and then it's a question of, is it clean, is it not clean? So if it's clean, it's in the closet, and so if it's there, I wear it. If it's not there, then I like, all right, well, are the pants clean? Yes. Okay, so what other shirts can I wear with those pants, or vice versa? Typically, like, it's rare that both pieces are dirty in what I'm trying to wear, and it's either one or the other, or they're both clean. So I'll go with whatever I had in my head that's available, and then improvise from there if I need to, or wear what I had in mind.
Well, it's funny now. What I do is I'll walk into my closet and I'll start to put together a palette, like in my mind, of the kind of mood that I'm in for that day. So, like, sometimes I'll be in sort of a somber mood. In fact, very often I'll be in sort of a somber mood. It's not very often that I'll walk in there and grab something bright. Uh, but, like, I'll start to pull together pieces and say, this is something that I would not mind seeing in a painting, and so therefore I wouldn't mind seeing it on a person. I think that there are probably a lot of philosophies about this, but this is the best that I'm doing right now. Is because I have a graphic design background, it's very easy for me to pull from that resource and say, these are colors that I would choose in a design. Why wouldn't I choose them for me too? But it's very much about the color rather than any combination of styles or cuts. Usually I tend to go for very simple clothes for that reason, that I would rather emphasize the color rather than some detail going with some other detail. Like the way that the cuff hangs with the way that the front of pants hang, or something like that. Um, when you come up with that idea in your mind of what you're going to put on, what are some of the things that are decision trees for you?
Uh, Usually if I'm going out, then it's fit is kind of the driving factor. Whereas if I'm going to work, it's more or less the level of professionalism I'm trying to convey that day. Because I have a lot of polo shirts, I have a lot of Oxford shirts. Some Oxford shirts are meant to be tucked in. Some are small enough on me that I don't need to tuck them in. So I kind of like have, sort of like a straight business casual, sort of like skater business casual, and then like full on casual, but can still go to work. Like three kind of levels.
Yeah.
And I kind of like think about what I need to do that day. Like, am I going to a meeting with the CIO? Am I meeting with other high level managers on campus? Am I presenting? These are the type of questions I ask myself, and then I'll pick my outfit for work based upon those kind of things.
You talked very specifically about sneakers too. You did not call them sneakers though.
No, skate shoes.
Skate shoes. Do you have non-casual footwear that you use for special occasions?
Yeah, I did. I did have a pair of dress shoes that I bought in, I think it was high school, that had survived in perfect tact up until I moved from my townhouse to my house 2 summers ago, and they got damaged in the move or during packing or something. So I actually had to throw them out, and now I'm actually going to buy a new pair tomorrow. But that's really the only other shoe I wear, and I don't really wear them that often.
It's funny. I have collected pretty recently like 10 pairs of shoes, and it's like they all have slightly different purposes. Like I would say 5 or 6 pair are dress shoes, and mostly it's about a differentiation in color, or like I just picked up this really beautiful pair of black leather shoes that have this buckle on it that goes really well with my favorite belt. But it's funny, I never really considered it before. It was like, what's the most comfortable thing I could wear? And these shoes are not particularly comfortable, but they look good. And it's funny how I care more about the appearance of them than the way that they feel now. I would prefer that they were both equal, that they look good and they feel good. But it's not like they're particularly painful or anything, but it's like before I would have been like, I'm going to throw these shoes out because they don't fit my feet exactly right.
Well, I actually do. Function and form are paramount to me. If something's not comfortable, I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to wear it. So whenever I look for an article of clothing, it's got to convey the look I'm looking for, and it needs to be comfortable as well. So, for example, the shoes that you just mentioned, I would not buy those for myself personally. In fact, the dress shoes that I'm talking about,
yeah,
they're a brand called Deer Stags. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
But their whole thing is like a dress shoe with the comfort of a sneaker.
Right.
And that's what I had for all those years, and they were amazing. I loved them. And I'm going to Sears tomorrow to spend my $49.99 on a pair, and going to get another pair of them because, I don't wear dress shoes that often, and when I do, I want to be comfortable. And they look exactly like any other dress shoe, black leather dress shoe, but I don't, I could feel like I could play basketball in them if I needed to.
You might need to.
That's right, I might.
So let's move on. You just brought up Deer Stag as a brand, and I happen to be wearing a gift that the girl who I'm seeing right now got me. It's really beautiful wool pullover, which happened to meet up with my requirements on this list. And I don't know how I feel about this collar. It's a little Jedi-ish.
It's a fancy collar.
It's a fancy collar for sure. I don't mind it though. It's just different than what I would normally. It reminds me a little bit of a hoodie, but it's not a hoodie at all. It's just got this weird thing. I say weird in the most beautiful possible sense of the word. But I do like the ribs. Like I have a lot of ribbed sweaters. I really prefer this texture, and it feels nice. And the only concern that I have should not be a concern at all. But the only concern that I have is this. Do you see what that is?
Yep, Tommy Hilfiger.
It's a Tommy Hilfiger sweater, and I don't know how I feel about it. I very specifically do not wear brands, even though everything's got. I mean, everything has a brand name to it, but not everything puts the brand in a noticeable way on the clothing. You know, sometimes it'll just be on the tag.
Right.
And I don't mind that at all. But and this is so subtle. Somebody would notice it, but I would not notice it.
You got to really look for it. And that's one of the things, like, I know Tommy Hilfiger does have, like, I remember when I was in middle school and he was getting, like, really popular, you know, his clothes had his name all over it with the flag, and it was, like, real tacky, and I, like, really resented his clothing line for that reason. But now, it's, you know, the type of clothes that I would wear of his all have that very subtle branding. Like, it's a very small flag on the pocket, which could mean anything.
Right.
Or whoops, sorry, as you mentioned, you have it on the sleeve, which I think, like, honestly, listen, if he's gonna put his little logo on it, as tiny as that is, like, that's, in my opinion, the perfect situation for you.
It's certainly not offensive in the same way that I find other branding offensive. As a matter of fact, as a logo, it's pretty beautiful. You know,
Right.
It's not even like, it's so abstract. It reminds me a little bit of a Mark Rothko painting or something. So it's, but I'm still a little bit torn about it. I mean, I love it. It's a beautiful gift, and I feel comfortable in it, and I've been wearing it. But at the same time, I'm sort of torn about this idea about brand, because I'm so reluctant to partake in advertising for advertising's sake of a brand. I don't want to promote that idea. So, but I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that you have different ideas about brand, that brand does have value.
Yeah, I do. I feel that way. And, you know, I kind of feel like the clothes that I do wear that do express a brand, it's a brand that I fully support, embrace, will be an evangelist for. You know, so if I am going to wear a brand, you know, I kind of view myself as an ambassador of that brand. So I need to be comfortable in that sense. Like, for example, with Tommy Hilfiger, I don't know if I would necessarily buy a sweater of his, but I have a Tommy Hilfiger Oxford shirt that I wear, and I proudly wear it because I actually am a huge fan of his collar that he has on his Oxford shirts. Not the points, not the buttons, but the actual. This is not a Tommy Hilfiger shirt, but the actual material that lines the inside of the collar. It's all made in a special way to have that collar keep its shape. And if you look at a Tommy Hilfiger Oxford shirt, it's very obvious how it is done, and it's done specifically to keep that collar high and stiff. And that I love, and that's actually one of the main reasons I bought the Tommy Hilfiger shirt that I have. So, you know, I'll proudly wear that shirt, and, you know, if somebody asks me about it, that's what I'm going to tell them why I love it. You know, and that's just one, you know, and again, a very tiny flag on the pocket, you know, you could almost miss it, you know, if you're not looking for it. So it's not as obnoxious as some of other clothing companies. But, you know, I think in the line of clothing that we're talking about, you know, you look at a Brooks Brothers shirt, you know, you have the very tiny sheep that's on the pocket. These are things that are, like I said, not obnoxious. And sure, the argument could be made that you're kind of bragging about the status of the clothing because sometimes it's expensive, but at the same time, I think it demonstrates that you're focused on quality and you insist upon wearing quality. You know, it's not like you're wearing, you know, like if you were to go to a flea market and buy knockoff, Nautica or whatever brand, and it's not the quality. And that's, I think, a great. That's a what's the word I'm looking for? A misdeed, I guess. Whereas that's specifically where you're focused on. I need this branding. I need people to know that I'm wearing this brand. Whereas our approach is more quality based and sort of functionally based, and therefore I think the branding becomes secondary. So therefore, it's not as egregious for us to wear these brands. Whereas if we went out and sought them out and were wearing illegitimate goods with that brand, then that would be like a sin.
So one of the things that has sort of inspired me a bit is the idea that Steve Jobs, for example, had his iconic visual presence designed for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe we talked about this a bit. I love that idea that every time that somebody saw you, they would expect to see you in a certain way.
Right.
And I really am trying to achieve something like that, so that, so that if you saw me in a certain set of clothes, you might even say, that doesn't look like John, or that doesn't look quite right, or whatever. And in fact, when I've thought about this, I've thought about what that might look like. And, I think about my favorite thing in the world to wear is like a particular pair of really comfortable jeans and like the most inexpensive colored Hanes t-shirt, like undershirt that I can find, maybe on top of a white shirt of the same kind, just so that there's like a little bit of it. And as a matter of fact, it's exactly what I'm wearing under the sweater right now, is a white shirt covered by a black shirt covered by the sweater. And I'm not sure why. I guess that simplicity, that minimalism, I like to think that it reflects my personality. That complexity comes in other ways, but it doesn't come in that way. It's like in the same way that I don't want to emphasize brand, I almost want to emphasize anti-brand. And one of the ways that I could do that is by taking a $5 shirt and elevating it to my normal everyday wear. And then that's contrasted a bit with this idea that I've really emphasized, even regardless of whether I have meetings that day, or regardless of what the meetings are or who I'm meeting with, always wearing slacks, special socks, like something with some color or something, as opposed to just everyday, sort of black socks, dress shoes, button-down shirt, a tie, which in the past I've been very reluctant to do because it has been so uncomfortable. And there's also these tiebacks to, I went to Catholic school as a kid and had to wear a tie, and so there was sort of this obligation that I didn't necessarily care to associate with. I'm over most of that now, so it's like I don't mind putting on a tie because I also like the way that it looks. But I haven't begun to experiment really with like methods of ties. Like I've tried a couple different methods, but usually it's just a regular simple
Windsor
tie
knot.
technique. Yeah, Windsor knot. So right now I'm sort of like working through methodology. I'm working through what I want my image to be, and it's a very exciting time for me from a fashion perspective because any route is available, and I'm willing to experiment now in ways that I probably would not be as willing to experiment with if I was at your stage where I had a very clear idea of the way that I wanted to present myself. Do you have any advice for somebody who is at my stage versus at your stage?
One thing that I kind of like, I don't know if I've never really followed through on it, But one thing that I kind of over the years have done is like while watching TV or movies or flipping through a magazine, like noted mentally different styles that I liked. You know, like the idea of something. Like I love the idea of a trench coat, but I would never wear one. You know, like I like what a trench coat what a trench coat conveys when you wear one. So like I'll kind of, you know, if I'm not going, if I see something that I like and I make a note of it, if I'm not going specifically for that exact style, I'll go for the emotion that that style makes me feel. You know what I mean? So like I said, I would never wear a trench coat, but I like the idea of one, and I like the um, message that a trench coat conveys. So like I associate, like for example, like my stiff collars in my shirts that I love, I kind of associate freely with the trench coat. Like I don't expect anyone else to really understand that
No,
association.
I mean, for me, it's almost like you're starting down this road of a certain military correctness.
Yeah, like well, it's kind of go to the uniform idea.
Yeah, and I'm not saying at all that you are militant,
No, I know
but
that.
it's but it sounds like you like the idea of almost like uh, German uniforms in World War II. This very sort of, and I say this like I'm not I'm not calling you a Nazi, Sean.
I
I'm
know
just
that.
saying. I'm
But I
just
know what you're saying. You're saying the reason that people are often cite the German uniforms from World War II as an interesting fashion choice is because it was the only military uniform that at the time, and probably even now still, that was like expertly tailored.
hmm.
And it was tailored because it was conveying a specific image and look about the German army. And so I understand where you're coming from. And yeah, sure, my stiff collar kind of falls in line with that sort of same philosophy where
It
the
falls
Germans
in,
were trying
it
to
falls
create
into goose step.
the Germans were trying to strike fear in the people they were fighting with the tailored nature of their uniforms. I'm trying to convey a level of sort of formality, but also a level of professionalism in my collar. Um, you know, like for whatever reason, I associate those two things with a stiff, nice collar. Um, I know I seem kind of like hung up specifically on collars, but there's
No,
more
well,
to
I
it than
mean,
the
I think
collar.
it's a point of reference that gives a good follow through on the other choices you might make.
Right.
You know, like cuffs or like the way that your pants would truncate or the shoes that you would choose, or it's like there's a stiffness, there's a certain starch mentality to it. Uh, when I was in college, I remember having a conversation. This was at University of the Arts with a guy. I can't remember his name now, but I remember having a conversation with him, and he had this idea that as an art project, he was going to make custom interchangeable buttons and almost like cufflinks, but like for like every button,
Yeah.
or like changeable heads for zippers, like pulls. And I remember at the time thinking, what a ridiculous thing. And he was trying to explain that everybody makes fashion choices, and I was like, I don't make fashion choices. Uh, and he was like, everybody makes fashion choices. Whether or not they are making them consciously or whether they're making them intelligently is another issue. But there's a reason that you put the things on that you put on, and there's a reason that you are perceived by the world by what you wear. Uh, because you would not be perceived the same way if you were in Bermuda shorts and a t-shirt. And I remember one of the times in my life when I realized so very clearly the effect that fashion choices make on the viewer, on the audience, was I was watching Pulp Fiction. And of course, there's the scene where John Travolta and what's his
Samuel
name,
Jackson.
Samuel Jackson, have to change into Quentin Tarantino's everyday, weekend wear from their iconic black suits, and the sort of comedic effect that it had. Meanwhile, if you hadn't been watching them walk around in iconic black suits for the entire film, it wouldn't necessarily be comedic at all. It was just laughable that these stone cold killers would be seen in such ridiculous, in context, ridiculous wear, And it made such an impact on me sort of instantaneously, like, oh, that's why people wear suits, or that's why people make choices about the fashion that they wear. And it like sort of planted a seed for me, and also followed through with this conversation that I had with this guy in college where I said, that's ridiculous, and he convinced me a little bit. He made me start to think about it. But now it's very, very clear when somebody walks in something versus something else, there is an air about them that has so much to do with what they're wearing. And I want to make decisions and choices about what I wear to emphasize the things that I want to say without saying anything. So anyway, that's why this conversation, I think, is important, and why I'm envious in a lot of ways about your assuredness in your choices about what you wear, because it's like I want to have that same assuredness, but it's a process, and I'm enjoying the process. A final point on brand, and then I want to talk to you about one of the things I know you love, which is timepieces. So anyway, last year I had cataracts, and you remember this, Sean, because I was with you my first week at our place of work, and I was walking. It was my first time meeting with you on campus, and it was raining out, as I remember.
Yes.
And we were walking down the stairs into Woodrow Wilson Building.
Yes.
And I took a stumble into the door. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure we can still make out where the impact was. And like I remember a girl like gasped, so,
She did. There was a gasp.
Yeah, it was audible. It was audible. So anyway, I had cataracts, and I don't think you knew how bad it was until that day. But yeah, I couldn't really see. So I had to go and get surgery. And after I got surgery, very common after cataract surgery, especially, well, I guess in all cataract surgeries, you usually end up having to wear glasses after the fact because the intraocular lenses that they've replaced your lenses with are not as sensible as the biological ones, where they can be affected to see both far and near. And usually there's a choice made by the patient about which they would prefer to see, or sometimes it's made by the doctor, as it was in my case, based on what the best vision would be. And because I do most of my work with computers this far away, it made sense for it to be, there to be a lot of flexibility. So I tend to be farsighted now. So I can see everything over there exceptionally clearly. But in order to see the screen, if I wanted to read, I would have to throw on some glasses. So I had never had to choose glasses before in my life. And I went into that choice really not knowing much about how I wanted to look or whatever. So I tried a few frames, and I really liked these frames. They were nice and angular, and they had some curvature to them, and they were relatively thick, but not incredibly thick. But I didn't really know what I was doing. And I chose the ones that I wanted and didn't worry too much about price. And it turns out that these have been fantastic glasses, very adjustable, and I like the way that they make me look. And other people have given me compliments on them. But there is this branding issue because they are Armani Exchange glasses. And I remember uh, after having them on, I met up with one of our common friends, Shane. And Shane looked at me, knowing something about my reluctance of brand, I think, looked at me, looked at my glasses, and said, "Are those Armani Exchange?" I said, "Yeah, they are." And nobody else before or since has ever asked me the question, but Shane did. And that says something about Shane. But it also says something about me. I was a bit embarrassed by the recognizance of the brand. I was like, yeah, like I was apologizing for it a bit.
I would be apologizing too.
Well, why is that? Let's talk about that too.
Because when you look at Armani Exchange, you think of like Eurotrash douchebags that go to clubs.
I guess.
Pump their fists.
I guess. But I don't necessarily get that from this. It's
no,
just,
I don't. Not the glasses. No.
But, right, but the brand, and I don't really know that much about the brand. Now, if somebody, now I'm like extra embarrassed because I would not have made the association. I just like the glasses, and they are high quality. In other words, I drop these things probably 6 times a day because I'm since the winter came, my sinuses have been crap, and so I have my head back half the day, sort of like draining my sinuses. Probably too much information, but so these things constantly fall off the back of my head and land on the ground, and they don't have any scratches. They're a little bit loose, but they're highly adjustable. As I said, my optometrist has a glasses shop in-house, and anytime I stop there, I just hand my glasses to the guy. He polishes them and tightens them, and they're good as new as soon as I get them back. And but I would not necessarily have chosen based on brand. I was just choosing based on the look of the frames. If I could have gotten these for whatever, half the price or a third of the price or whatever, and not had the same brand on there, I would have been happy to do that. But I probably would have broken the frames 12 times. So it goes back to the same issue, this idea of brand versus quality versus perceived brand and perceived quality. So I don't know what else to say about it, except that it's odd because I never really think about it unless I see the little logo on there. And then I sort of regret having the little logo on there. You know, I almost want to like tape them up or something.
Pop them off.
Yeah, something. And I always have them on my head. It's like people don't recognize me sometimes unless I have my glasses on my head because I was just like, you know. Anyway, let's talk about watches.
Watches are very important to me and have been since I was a little kid. I don't know what it is about watches. I don't know. I don't remember where I got obsessed with them. The first watch I can ever remember getting was a watch, digital watch that had a giant rubber frog. Literally, the frog was like this big on your wrist, like see on my hand. Yeah. You'd have to open his mouth, and then the watch would be underneath there. So literally, as a little kid, I'd have this giant rubber frog, like that big, on my wrist. And that was the first watch I can remember ever getting. I used to wear it all the time. And then over the years, my parents bought me a Timex Ironman watch, which I got in 3rd grade. My friend Jared got the same watch for Christmas that year.
I probably owned about 6 of those. I love that watch.
I own that. I used that same watch from 3rd grade to high school. And then, you know, I had a couple. I don't even remember what timepiece I wore in high school. If it probably was another Timex of some sort. No, I know what it was. It was another Ironman. It went from the original Ironman with the stupid little light bulb on the side to the Indiglo Ironman.
Yeah, I had both of those.
I wore that to college, and then in college I made the decision that I wanted analog watches. So I wore analog Timexes all through college, and which was good because I used to beat the hell out of them, scratch them up against the dorm walls and stuff, and you know, throw them in golf bags and such, and it would get a lot of abuse, and they always, took a licking and kept on ticking, as the old slogan used to say. When I graduated college, my parents bought me a Swiss Army watch, an analog one, which was very nice. The reason they bought me one was because I had
is that the same as Equinox?
Victorinox.
Victorinox, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
My parents bought me one because I bought a knockoff one in Long Beach Island once, because it was painted in a special luminescent paint that made the entire face and the numbers on the dial glow, and that's what I really loved about it. And there was just something that was special about that knockoff. I remember when I bought it, it was Swiss Army watch made in China was how it was advertised. So, irony there. And then I ended up breaking the face of that watch, and it broke my heart because I really loved that watch for a long time. And then they bought me a real one, and it just never fit me as right, and we tried to get a different band, and I never really wore it. And so I stopped wearing a watch for a long period of time. I guess I was like, a good 3 or 4 years went by, and I stopped wearing watches because of cell phones and stuff. And then in 2008, I think, maybe 2009, my roommate and I were having dinner, and we were discussing watches. His father was a big watch aficionado. He was also, but he had never really, made his own purchase. He was always gifted watches over the years. He had a Tag Heuer that he would wear once in a while. But we decided that we were gonna research the world of watches and make a decision on a watch, and we were going to spend a lot of money on a watch. We weren't going to just buy like $100 watch. We were looking in, 4 figures on watches. We wanted to buy an heirloom timepiece that we could hand to our sons, or a member of our family and pass on, and we knew it would stay with us. And we specifically wanted to go with mechanical watch as well. That was very important with us. So we did research for months. He decided to go with a brand called Oris, and I went with a brand called Ball. And, we like I said, we spent, considerable amount of money on these watches. And that began a reinvigorated love affair for me with timepieces, where I became just engrossed with all things watches. I was subscribing to 2 fine watch magazines simultaneously, learning about Swiss movements versus Asian movements, Chinese versus Japanese movements, knowing the differences of quartz movements, and that whole thing. Became super engrossed in that world. And the reason I was so hung up on mechanical watches was because the idea of these tiny intricate parts being assembled to create a working mechanism that kept incredibly accurate time in an analog, totally old school fashion. There was just something about a watchmaking that's been around for hundreds of years, and still being, yes, there's been innovations and changes over the years, but still being kind of rooted in this historical past, yet still being incredibly accurate. And, just kind of being amazed by the engineering and the craftsmanship and a lot of the different, dedication that watchmakers have for their art. And, I just became completely enamored with the idea of watches. And I think I went, after that first purchase, I think I bought about 6 watches in a period of 2 years at that point, of varying degrees of pricing. Nothing, again, even close to the Ball watch I purchased. Nothing I purchased after that was even over $100. Everything was less than that. Specifically, I made that purpose. I wanted to find lower priced watches that offered high quality timekeeping, and ended up discovering a brand of watch called Orient Watch. And the thing about Orient Watch that fascinated me was they were a wholly owned subsidiary of the Seiko Corporation, and they made their own automatic movement, which means it's mechanical, that automatically wound based on you wearing the watch, didn't have to be manually wound. And learned that there was a school of horology based in Pennsylvania where a lot of Americans go to learn the art of watchmaking, had done an independent study of the major Swiss manufacturers of movements, which is ETA, the ETA Corporation, which is owned by the Swatch conglomerate, which is basically in the watch world is considered to be the most prestigious, accurate, high-end watch movement in the world, an ETA movement. Versus Orient, which, like I said, made their own, sold their watches typically for under $100, was actually more accurate than the ETA movement. So when I learned about this study, I just became completely engrossed in Orient. Purchased about 3 different Orient watches. Used to be personally in communication with the president of Orient Watch in America via Twitter. He would send me like free gifts and stuff in the mail all the time. And became kind of like a brand ambassador for them with people. And I love watches. I love well-made watches. I haven't purchased a watch now probably in a good 2 or 3 years. I'm happy with the collection I have. And
how many watches do you have?
I have, let's see, I'll go through the ball. I have 3 Orient watches. Two of which are diver type watches. One is a dress watch. All 4 of those are mechanical. And then I have the only quartz watch I have is this guy right here. This is a Tissot. And the reason that I went with this watch is that it's actually a touchscreen watch. The crystal, which is the glass face, actually there's segments of the face. At 12 o'clock it says Medio. At 6 o'clock it says compass, and there's other functions at the different numbers. But I hit a button on the side which activates the crystal, and I press the area of the watch I want to activate. And then the hands of the watch become basically what's the word? The word I'm looking for, a device. So like a compass. The hands turn into a compass and then do north, south, east, west. The meteorological does barometric pressure. So to me, this was like a technical marvel that it does all these different types of readouts, and it's all touch-based in a quartz watch. And Tissot is one of the is a very high-end Swiss watchmaker. This watch not very expensive. I actually got it for around $75, but they retail in the hundreds of dollars sometimes. But this to me, because it was such a technical marvel, I felt that I needed to have it in my collection.
Wow.
So I don't know. I'm like, watches are like a really, I don't know. I take it very seriously. Like I have friends that are really into Nixon watches, which are very in fashion right now. And I have a hard time with Nixon watches because they are made in China. They're shit watches that you're literally paying for design, and they are not good timepieces at all. And it'd be one thing if they were kind of like economically priced, but the price of a Nixon watch for what it is made out of it's highway robbery in the most textbook of examples. And it breaks my heart that they are so popular. But again, like we learned with Apple products, design sometimes trumps functionality, and people are willing to pay for design. And that's, I think, definitely the case with Nixon. But
so let me ask you some questions about watches.
Sure.
If you don't have a watch on your wrist, do you find yourself constantly checking? In other words, is the watch a timepiece primarily for you, or is it a fashion piece primarily for you?
It is fully functional. It is a timepiece.
Okay.
I have different watches. I actually have a 6th watch that I remember. No, I have 7 watches. I have an Invicta watch, which is a clone of a Rolex. It looks like a Rolex Submariner. And then I also have a Chinese knockoff watch that looks exactly like an Omega Speedmaster, which I would love to own an Omega Speedmaster one day, but they're like $3,500. And there's a Chinese company called Alpha that makes a clone that I got for like $60. And it looks exactly like a Speedmaster. I love the look of a Speedmaster, and one day would love to own a real Omega Speedmaster, but I can't afford one at this point, so the Chinese knockoff will do for now. But yes, they are completely functional for me. I look at the time, the date. I don't really take my cell phone out of my pocket to look at that information. And I wear a watch during business hours or if I leave the house. Typically, like right now, I'm not wearing my watch. When I'm at home, I don't wear a watch. The minute I leave my house, there's a watch on my wrist.
Do you feel like there's a correspondence between the importance of watches for you and the importance of timeliness?
Timeliness is something I'm not, punctuality is something I value, and I do everything in my power to be punctual. But there are a lot of outside forces that prevent me from being on time. Sometimes I'm not on time for work, and I have been actually for a long time. But when I worked at Ryder, we used to have a running joke called SP time, which meant, I would roll in whenever I rolled in, and that was 9 o'clock as SP time. And, that might be 9:30. One time it was 10 o'clock. That's punctual. The watch does not signify my dedication to timeliness in any way.
Well, that's very interesting because I think that there's something for me about having a clock set to the exact precise time, and yet my punctuality is shit. But like if I notice that there is a difference between a clock I have over here and a clock I have over there, it will drive me crazy unless they are exactly in sync. I mean, not crazy, but like I don't want to see that one saying 11 o'clock and this one saying 10:56. Like
sure.
I want there to be some constancy. And right now, actually, there's a clock in my car that's 5 minutes fast. And I notice it because I always plug in my phone and put it up on my dash like as soon as I get in the car. And there's a non-correspondence between the various clocks. And it's not on purpose that I would have this clock be out of sync. It's just not easy to set the clock in my car as it is to set any other clock. I usually rely on automated synchronization in order to, any of my devices are synchronized with networks. And my electric's been going out a lot lately because of all the storms and whatnot, and I came home the other day to find my stove and microwave both out because the electric had apparently been out. And I always find it a little funny that any clock is not sort of automatically synchronized with the world now. But yeah, I don't find a correspondence either between my want to have a timepiece be precisely correct and the fact that I am not often punctual. It's one of my personal flaws. It's something that there are worse flaws to have, and I've had those too. But if it comes down to that or something else, I would rather be not punctual than flawed in character or something. So I noticed the watch that you just demonstrated has a fairly normal-sized face, but I have seen rather large watches on your wrist. Or is that yeah?
Men's watches now are typically 40 millimeters or larger. This one is probably 40. Maybe even. No, actually, it's 42 because the other watch I have is 42. They're the same size. Most of my watches are 42 millimeters in diameter. I might have my one of my Orient dive watches is 46, maybe 48, but everything else is 42.
Are there any non-obvious benefits to a larger-faced watch, or is it strictly look and feel?
That's style now. I mean, if you look at Rolex is one of the few companies that kind of sticks to the old diameter. It's not uncommon to see a men's watch from Rolex with a 38 millimeter diameter. Some of their watches teeter at 40, but you'll never see anything larger than 40 in Rolex. Same thing with Omega and all of your other high end. They kind of are rooted in tradition, and they don't kind of bend to current trends in the watch industry. So therefore, that's why you won't ever see anything over 40 millimeters from any of those companies. But companies like Invicta, which is a company that has people in the watch world have a love-hate relationship with. They make a style of watch called a Russian diver, which goes to be as large as 56 millimeters, which you can imagine is like having a tennis ball on your wrist.
Yeah, kind of.
So it's big watches are in fashion right now. Nixon makes very large watches as well. There's tons of watch companies that make very large watches because they're in. It's a trend. It's a complete fashion trend right now, and I don't expect it to stay that way forever. And that's why companies like Rolex don't participate in those trends. They want people to buy their watches because they are, like you said, watches that are timeless. They can be handed down from generation to generation. It's funny, if you go on eBay or you go to a site that chronicles vintage Rolex watches, you'll see some of them even go as small as 36 millimeters. And they are ridiculously small. And it's just because men back then wore, a smaller watch. It was, more acceptable. Men were also smaller, height-wise and such. We know in history men have gotten taller. So it's all kinds of different things are factored into that. But yeah, if you wear like vintage Rolex watches, they look ridiculous on a man today because of how small they are.
Do you ever see a watch on somebody and think less of them because of the watch that they have on?
No. I think there's, with the exception of a Nixon watch, I don't think less of people. I guess I'm just people that I know personally that love Nixon watches just kind of get disappointed. Same way I feel about people that buy dogs from pet stores. Just my attitude is like, you should know better.
Yeah.
That's something that also really upsets me. But no, absolutely not. If somebody has a Timex on or an Armatron watch, there's a beauty in every, and I see beauty in almost every watch. I'm not a watch snob at all. I mean, I'll go to Kohl's and I'll see some off-brand watch that I've never heard of, and there's a beauty about it that I'll appreciate, and I'll even say to myself, like, wow, like if I just didn't care about the money I spent on watches, I would buy this watch because I love how it looks.
When you go to a like you've of course been to Quaker Bridge Mall where they have that little watch kiosk.
Yeah.
You wouldn't buy any of those, would you?
No, actually, there is a watch that they advertise. It has like an LED number, like a red LED number on it on the face, like an old alarm clock. And I see it advertised in the case every time I walk by that stand. And I'm always fascinated by it because it reminds me of like a Nixie tube. And there's even Nixie watches as well, but they're so hard to come by that they're like unobtainable. But this watch kind of gives that kind of 80s Casio alarm clock vibe to it. That's really the only timepiece I've ever seen at that kiosk that catches my eye. I don't know if I would like wear it, but it's. I mean, I've worn some hideous watches in my day. I had an orange and navy blue Swatch watch that I wore when I worked at Ryder. Maybe you remember it. It was a smartwatch. It used to sync with the MSN Direct network, which was an FM-based data network that Microsoft had. And I would get news alerts. It would sync with my MSN Messenger. I used to get tons of information from that watch, and even would push calendar information from my Outlook calendar to that watch when I had appointments. The idea. Smartwatches, when they first came out with that FM network, were amazing to me. Completely blew me away, and I was so disappointed to hear that smartwatches were no longer going to be pursued. But now, over the past 2 years, smartwatches have become in again. And my girlfriend and I actually participated in a Kickstarter over the summer, and we're about to receive our watches from this company called Martian, who's developed a Bluetooth smartwatch that works with basically any smartphone. we're very
I actually
excited to
was
get
going to
it.
ask you. I was going to ask you about the Kickstarter campaign for Pebble.
Yeah, I know. The only reason I didn't go with Pebble was because the functionality of Pebble wasn't compatible with my smartphone of choice, which you know is Windows Phone.
Yeah.
Whereas Martian was platform agnostic and used basic Bluetooth standard for its communication. And that's what attracted me to the Martian watch. But the Pebble watch, I think, is fascinating. I actually communicated with the developers of Pebble about Windows Phone compatibility, and they told me it might come in future models, but on the Kickstarter model, it was not going to work.
It's it's funny you mentioned Bluetooth compatibility and smartphone compatibility. Of course, that brings me back to the Fitbit, which drives me crazy every time I think that they are not actively developing their Bluetooth compatibility in their newer devices with Android, which has supported Bluetooth forever. And it also goes back to this conversation because, of course, I use my Fitbit for my main watch. If I'm wondering what time it is, I'll usually grab my Fitbit and flex through until I get to the clock. And I wish and they actually just have the Flex now, which is a wrist-based tracker,
Right.
which I think is a great idea, but still not compatible with Android from a Bluetooth perspective. Anyway, well, any final words you want to have about watches? You've had a lot to say, and I'm very interested in the conversation. It actually is inspiring to hear somebody talk about something with such passion when there are so many people who have given up on timepieces.
Yeah, it's really upsets me that seems to be the thing. Like, you read those articles all the time about how kids don't even know what a wristwatch is or would never wear one, and that kind of breaks my heart. Like I said, watches have been a part of my life, as far back as I can remember, and it's something I hope to pass on to my child if I have a children. Anybody that's in my life, I want to stress the importance of a watch because I think there's a deep historical importance of wristwatch, and the technology that goes into watches is something that fascinates me as well. And this new line of smartwatches, also watches that are hook up to the atomic clock or something, that's a whole other area that fascinates me too. These timepieces that sync with the atomic clock is amazing. It breaks my heart to think of a world where wristwatches don't exist. But I don't think that's happening. I think these smartwatches are going to be real popular again, and kind of bolster the smartphones we know and love today. But
like
there's
so many other items. There's a certain focus on quality that emerges when the general availability becomes less.
Right.
It's like having a camera or any number of things where there's a certain beauty and tradition that is kept in a object that is uncommon.
That's right, and that's why I'll always love the mechanical watch for exactly those reasons. Like you said, because of the beauty, the craftsmanship, the tradition. Tradition is something that's very important to me, and I think that mechanical watches, of certain types embody that, and I think that's important for us to, as humans, to perpetuate that tradition.
Well, it certainly comes across in your style, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's it for this week. So I will see you next week, and thank you so much for hanging out tonight, because I know you got a late start, and I really wanted to make sure that we got a chance to talk as usual.
It was my pleasure.
I'll talk to you real soon.
All right, talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.